Okay, this is a week 4 PHP notes for how to create forms in PHP and pass variables, create sessions and destroy sessions, member site that we'll be creating in here in the lab. At the end of this PDF file, there is instructions to download week3.zip. It's this week4.zip that you'll be downloading. For this one, you'll basically just be making sure that you have a user and database created in phpMyAdmin and a config.php file created as well, which actually will be in the source file here. And that's about it. There's no code changes really to be made in the download. Just showing you how it connects to the MySQL database on creating tables and session variables. Homework is Rocks Chapter 2, reading a complete exercise from Rocks Chapter 2 on page 83, exercises 3 and 6. One is on time of day, the other's on arrays. And when you're finished, upload the example below in the Dropbox. There's a source example, and then how to upload your local host to external host via FTP. As always, it's in here. So we're just going to start with the lab on the member site. Here's what it looks like when you'll download it. Before you begin, make sure on your phpMyAdmin that you have created a user with your first initial last name, and that user should have a database with all rights. Here's my cconcle. To do that, just to recap, click on privileges, add new user. You'll put in your first initial last name here. Make sure any host is localhost. For password, same as your username. First initial last name. T. Smith. Create database with same name and all privileges. Check all. Click go. Now we've got T. Smith created. No tables in it yet. Click privileges. And there's a T. Smith user. Should have localhost here for the host. If yours doesn't, like mine, click on the little pencil here to make sure it does have localhost as any host. Instead of any host, you want localhost. That'll cause problems. There we go. Now we've got T. Smith localhost in there as well. That's important when you're running applications and on a local host and even external, to make sure the host says localhost. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to the beginning here. This basically just shows how PHP is used easily within members, a member site. Over on the right side is actual module that determines if a user is authenticated. If they've not, this will pop up over here on the right. They have access. Everyone has access to the home page, the about page. You'll notice .php. When I try to click on the members page, you'll notice even though there's this is members.php, it's always redirecting to index.php because they've not logged in. They log in with the admin user. Now they can go to home, about, and now members is available. They now have access to that. Up here is also a module. Admin, you have logged in successfully. Click log out. then does a 3 or 4 second redirect to index again. So the first thing in the steps here for the member site, it has you download this zip file, and then once you download it, again, make sure your local host username is created. And first thing you'll do is update your config file to your local host database username password. That information will be actually in the download for your lab. So let's go ahead and go into mine real quick. You'll notice in the labs folder here, there's a config file and then the week 4. We could pretend we have other folders here as well, but we just have week 4 we're looking at here. The config file is actually what needs to be updated with your database name, username, and password, which is your first initial last name. You'll save that. Then you'll go into the index page of the lab, and notice we have a number of PHP pages in here. Index is the initial launch page, and then as soon as they come to index page, you'll notice there's an include statement, which the notes go over, that allows you to include other PHP pages. It's just 3 lines of code. And the way this member site's created, if the PHP box is at the top of the page, it's open to everyone, which you have index, about, but the member site, you'll notice, has just login success.php. Everything else of these pages are all HTML. So we go back to the index.php, PHP box. It's inserting this page in there. Session start's always used when you're declaring a session or using a session. Here is the location of session start for PHP box. It's always going to be index. We put that session variable index into the session variable. And then also to look to see if my username is populated. If it's not, it redirects to the main login page on the right side, which is right over here. The main login page is just a basic HTML page with a post to another form called, let's see here, check login.php, and it's a post method. It's going to bring over 2 fields, my username and my password. Going back to the PHP box. So that's if they've not logged in yet. The session my username will be empty. If they have logged in, it's going to go into login success. This login success.php page, which what it does at the beginning is if the session is not available, means not one's been created at all during the PHP session, it's going to do a session start. If you don't do these lines of code here, you'll get an error saying that it's ignoring session start because it's already started. Then this next line 7, if it's not is set session my username, meaning if my username is not set as a session variable, it's going to redirect back to a index.php, else it's going to kick out their username, comma, you've logged in successfully, and then a link to the logout.php. Now this page here, login success, is actually tied to the members page. That's why you cannot go into the members page now currently, and even if I try to type in members manually, it's going to always redirect me to index, or click on this, it's going to redirect me to index. That's all because of this login success page. It's always going to redirect here if the my username is empty. Okay. Now once they've logged in to the website and they've logged in successfully and they click on the logout.php page. Let's go there. It's going to do it to destroy all sessions in a PHP website application. You do a session start and a session destroy. Everything else here is just a HTML page, except for it does do a refresh after 3 seconds, and it lets it sit there. And if they want, they could click on the login page again to get in. So click logout, sits for 3 seconds, and redirects to the home page. Next is the check login. This one is actually going to be on the in the PHP box on the main login page, main login.php page, where they actually log in. Notice it redirects to the check login.php post page. The check login does have a buffering that you need to turn on. Start session variable. Include your config file. Table name members. Username and password is plugged into local variable. Page is also plugged in using a session variable. The strip slashes allow to strip the string of any SQL statements that might be in the URL. Same thing here. And then finally a select statement, selecting all where members have username and password that match. Should kick back one result into this. And then we'd have a count. It's counting the rows, MySQL underscore num rows of result. If count is equal to 1, meaning the username and password have been created and are in the database, it's going to redirect to the file loginsuccess.php. So it echoes the page that they're on, which in this case would be members, or it could be index, or it could be about. If it's incorrect on the login, it's going to kick back this echo statement, wrong username, password, and then finally flush the output of the page. So if I click login, notice it says login, wrong username, password. And so that concludes the members site. I know it's quite a few pages, but if you go over each one of them as we've done here, it should be no problem. And you're really not changing any code except for the config.php file and making sure that your username database is created in phpMyAdmin. And one of the things I'll mention here before going to the next one is when you're using the include statement, make sure your relative path is relative to where it's located. Yeah, basic HTML, but just to make sure you know on this config file, it's right here in the root of labs. So every time you do a // that's one folder back. So if I had it 2 folders back, I'd do // config.php. Next is the homework. This was a simple array called flavor, 0, 1, and 2, seed of 0, sorting flavor, 0, 1, and 2. Arrays always start with a 0 and build up, not a 1 count. This one's going to print the entire array. Then the next lines echo and do a for each loop for each flavor as value. It's going to loop through those values one by one, blue raspberry, root beer, and pineapple, and then increment the seed. So if we go here to this one, this is what it should look like here, the print R statement, the looping, array 0, array 1, array 2, and then finally the time statement. There is also a time one here that we'll go to, which is, you have 2 exercises for your homework, I believe. time.php. That's what it should be putting out, is what time of day it is. Good morning. Code for that one. It's doing a date default time zone to America, Chicago. Current date, date G, meaning this is today's date. And then it's echoing out if it's between 5 and 12 noon, good morning. 13 and 17, good afternoon. 18 and 23, military hours, good evening. And there is a constant G that's in here that's undefined in mine. To fix the error on mine, all you needed to do was put quotes around the G, which is a date reference for PHP date. Doing a simple Google search for PHP date, which we have as a reference for our class, actually shows you all the different date formats and strings available. And the one we're using for this one is, we want to print out today's date, which actually is the G. Here prints out the format of an hour without leading zeros. So we're doing G here, printing out current time in the military hours, and it's taking that and putting it into that variable current time to determine the 24-hour military time where we fall in. And then when you run the application, there we go. There's a correct one. If you were to change your time clock on your computer to something else to just test it to make sure, I'll change mine from 6:14 a.m. to p.m. Click OK. Now it says good evening. So that concludes the lab and the take-home, or 2 lab, which is the time and the array. When you're finished, as always, put URLs down below to the week 4 homework. And then these practice labs I do not need you to turn in, but I would recommend doing them because you will be using them throughout, especially during your final. One last thing I want to leave you with is within PHP, you sometimes want to export your database. Click phpMyAdmin, export the name of the database you want to output or export. Click Add Drop Database. Scroll down. I use zip. Click Go. I'm going to prompt to save somewhere. There it is. And then to import that database, and you can do this either internally or externally somewhere, like to an external website. I'll use this one right here. Just a simple local SQL file, localhost.sql. In phpMyAdmin, you click Import, browse out to the SQL file. Click Go. And it's going to import that database with the tables. So that concludes week 4. If you have any questions, give me an email as always. Have a great week.